Hello, everyone. Thank you all for coming back to the Love and Betrayal channel. Today, I have a new and quite interesting story to share with you. The only one who listened, they said I was crazy. Too lonely, too broken, too lost in my own head. She talks to that dog like it's a person. She hasn't been right since the divorce. Poor little girl living with a mother like that. They whispered, "Yunt," whispered, thinking I couldn't hear them. But I did. And so did Leo. Say, my dog. Leo wasn't special at first glance. He was just a rescue, medium-sized, tan fur, soulful eyes. Found wandering a construction site, limping, ribs showing. They said he was probably 6 or 7 years old, damaged goods. But so was I. So when I saw him sitting quietly in the shelter corner while the other dogs barked and jumped, something clicked. He didn't ask for attention, he just waited for someone to see him. And I did. After I brought him home, I started talking to him. Not out of habit, out of desperation. My daughter Lena was only 7 at the time. Bright, quiet, too quiet. She hadn't really smiled since her father left. And when I tried to talk to her, she just nodded or looked down. But when I spoke to Leo, "Leo, do you think she's hurting too? Do you think I'm failing as a mom? Do you think we're ever going to be okay again?" He would blink slowly, tilt his head, place a paw on my knee. And somehow it was enough. Our neighbors thought I'd lost it. I didn't care, because Leo heard me in a way no human ever had. Over time, things got better. Lena started humming again, drawing, leaving little sticky notes on Leo's food bowl. Best dog ever. I love you more than peanut butter. He'd lick her cheek every night before bed, like it was his own way of tucking her in. One day I caught her whispering to him through the bedroom door. Mama cries when she thinks I'm asleep. I pretend not to hear it, but I do. Don't tell her, okay? I didn't cry that night. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, knowing that my daughter had found the same safe space I had. Then came the babysitter. I was starting a part-time remote job, needed someone to watch Lena for a few hours after school. Her name was Monica, early 20s, sweet, polite, recommended by a family in the neighborhood. At first, things were fine. Lena didn't say much about her, but she didn't seem upset. Until Leo started acting strange. Every time Monica arrived, Leo growled, low, quiet, but steady. He'd place himself between Lena and the front door, refused to leave the room when they were alone. One time, he even bared his teeth when Monica reached for Lena's backpack. I scolded him. "Leo, stop. That's rude." Monica laughed it off. "It's okay. Maybe he's just protective." But the growling never stopped. And Lena? She got quieter again. I asked her once, "Is Monica nice to you?" She paused. "She's okay." A shrug, and a half smile. But something in her eyes tightened. One afternoon, I came home early. Monica was in the kitchen on her phone. Leo was barking, frantic from the backyard. I froze. Leo was never outside without Lena. I ran to the window. He was pacing, barking toward the back door. I opened it and he bolted inside, straight up the stairs, to Lena's room. I followed. The door was closed, locked. Leo scratched, barked, howled. I banged. "Lena, Bima, yes, Lena, baby, open up." No response. Panic rose like acid in my throat. I pushed harder. Then I heard her voice. Tiny, choked. "Mommy?" I kicked the door open, and what I saw made my blood run cold. Lena was in the corner, tears on her cheeks, and Monica, startled, holding Lena's arm too tightly. Leo leapt between them, growling like I had never heard before, a deep, primal sound that shook the walls. Monica backed away. It's not what it looks like. She wouldn't listen. But I wasn't listening to her. I was already on my knees, holding Lena, calling the police. They arrested Monica that night. Turns out she had a history. Nothing on paper, but whispers, warnings ignored. Until now. Until Leo made sure she couldn't hurt anyone else. The next day, I sat on the floor beside Leo, held his face in my hands. You always knew." He licked my cheek. And for the first time in months, I cried, not from sadness, from relief. That night, Lena crawled into bed with me. She curled into my side and whispered, "I heard what they said about you, that you're crazy." I tensed. "Do you think I am?" She shook her head. "No, I think you were just talking to the only one who ever really listened." The story made it to the local paper. "Rescue dog saves child from abusive babysitter." They didn't print my name, or Lena's, but people knew. Small towns are like that. It didn't take long for the whispers to change. Not gone. Just different. She wasn't crazy after all. That dog knew something. Maybe we should have believed her. The neighbors stopped avoiding eye contact. Some even brought over cookies, cards, apologies wrapped in awkward smiles. I didn't need their guilt, but I accepted their change. The thing that struck me most? Leo didn't change at all. He didn't puff his chest, didn't act proud. He still waited by Lena's door each morning, still followed her around the garden like a quiet guardian. But there was something different in his eyes. Like he finally knew we believed in him too. Lena changed the most. Not overnight, but slowly, bravely. She started talking more, asking questions, telling stories, first to Leo, then to me. He growled that day because I was scared. He felt it, Mama. And I realized Leo didn't just listen. He felt for us. With us. We started going on walks together again. Just the three of us. Down the same streets where people once judged me for talking to a dog. Now, they waved. Some stopped us to say thank you. Others just bent down to pat Leo's head and whisper things like, "Good boy. You saved her. I hope you know." One little boy from the neighborhood, Jamie, was terrified of dogs. Used to run when he saw Leo. But one afternoon after school, he walked up slowly. Leo stood still. Calm, soft-eyed, Jamie reached out, touched his fur, then turned to his mom and whispered, "If he's the one who saved the girl, I think I trust him." Leo had become a symbol, not just of safety, but of healing. That weekend, Lena and I sat at the kitchen table with crayons and poster board. She wanted to make a thank you gift. For Leo, he doesn't like toys, she said, and he already has treats, so I want to make him a medal. She drew a big gold circle, wrote in purple marker, "Hero of the house, always listening." Then she taped it to his collar. He wore it proudly for the rest of the day. That night, as I tucked Lena into bed, she whispered something. "I think Leo used to be sad before he met us." I paused. "What makes you say that?" She looked at the glow-in-the-dark stars on her ceiling. "Because he only barked for real when I needed him, like he was waiting for something to bark about." I sat with that thought. Let it sink in, because she was right. Leo wasn't just a rescue. He was meant for us. And maybe we were meant for him too. A week later, the shelter where I'd adopted Leo reached out. The director had seen the story. She wanted to honor him at a small event, to show people that even broken dogs can be heroes, she said. At first, I hesitated. Would Leo be okay with the attention? Would it overwhelm him? But when I mentioned it to him, half laughing, still talking like he was human, he wagged his tail and nudged my arm, like he understood, like he was saying, "I've waited long enough. Let's help others now." We went. Leo wore his paper medal. Lena wore a proud smile. And I wore something I hadn't in years. Peace. The event was small, intimate to families, volunteers, other rescue dogs. They gave Leo a real medal, one with his name engraved. Lena placed it around his neck. He sat tall, stoic as ever, but his tail wagged like a heartbeat. One woman approached me after, mid-40s to Tempest, tired eyes and a kind smile. She said, "I've been talking to my dog too ever since my divorce. Everyone thought I was crazy." She paused, then added, "But maybe we're not. Maybe we're just the ones who finally found someone who listens without trying to fix us." I smiled and whispered, "It's not crazy, it's how we survived." That night, Lena placed both medals, paper and real, on Leo's collar, then curled up beside him on the floor. She looked up at me and said, "He barked for the first time to save me." I nodded. "And now the whole world is listening." I thought things were getting better, and they were, at least on the surface. Lena was smiling more. She and Leo were inseparable. She'd even started painting again, little watercolors of Leo with superhero capes and sparkles in his eyes. I had taken a full-time remote job, even began thinking of enrolling in an evening class. "We're finally okay," I told myself, but Leo knew better. It started with him refusing to go near the mailbox. Every afternoon, like clockwork, he'd walk Lena to the gate after school and wait while she checked the mail. But suddenly, he'd stop short, growl, hackles raised. It wasn't the mailman or a dog passing by. It was something else. I bent it down beside him. "What is it, boy? There's nothing there." But he wouldn't move forward. And when I reached into the box, I understood. Inside was no mail, just a note, folded once, and no envelope, no name. One line in blocky, angry handwriting. "You don't deserve her." I froze. Heart pounding. Lena was halfway back to the house already, Leo following closely behind her, tail stiff, gaze backward. I didn't tell her. Not then. I wanted to believe it was some mistake, a prank, left for the wrong house. But Leo didn't believe that. And the next morning, he refused to let Lena go to school alone. He walked her all the way to the gate again, then sat there. and waited. 2 hours passed, still there, until I finally went out and said, "She's safe, Leo. And then they coming inside." But his eyes were locked on the end of the street, watching, like he knew someone was coming. I checked our cameras. Nothing strange, but something didn't sit right. 2 days later, it happened again. Another note. This time, she'll never be safe as long as you're around. I called the police. Filed a report. They shrugged. Could be kids, could be nothing. Just keep an eye out. But Leo already was. He started sleeping by the front door again. Refused to eat until he did his rounds, room by room, checking each window, sniffing each lock. He was acting like he had before Monica, before the day he saved Lena, and then he barked. Loud, furious, middle of the night. I bolted upright in bed, heart racing, ran down the hall. Leo stood at the back door, body tense, growling. And right there, on the patio table, a third note, this one taped to a brick. "You should have kept your mouth shut." That was it. I packed Lena's things the next morning and took her to Lena's aunt's house across town. Just for a few days, I told her, like a sleepover. She hugged Leo tightly before leaving. "Be good, okay? Watch Mama." Leo licked her face once and nudged her backpack like a farewell. With Lena safe, I could finally breathe. Or so I thought. But Leo didn't relax. If anything, he grew more restless. He paced, slept in short bursts, and stared. Always at the backyard. Then it happened. At 3:12 a.m., a crash, glass shattering, my kitchen window. Leo was already charging before I even reached the hallway. By the time I got there, he had the intruder pinned to the floor. A man. Black hoodie, boot prints trailing through the broken glass, a knife inches from his hand. And Leo? Growling, teeth bared, every muscle in his body ready to protect me. I called the cops with shaking hands. They came. Arrested the man. Turns out he was Monica's cousin, a petty criminal with priors. She'd convinced him I had ruined her life, so he came to ruin mine. But Leo didn't let him. Leo knew. Before I did, before the cameras, before the police. Leo knew what danger felt like, because he had lived it, and he refused to let us live it again. That morning I sat with Leo on the floor, stroking his fur with trembling hands. I whispered, "You knew, you always know." He rested his head in my lap. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was crazy for talking to him, because he had been listening all along. I didn't expect it to go this far. After the break-in, I thought the arrest would be the end. A police report, a few more sleepless nights, maybe even a fresh start. But then came the subpoena. The man who broke in, Monica's cousin, was pleading not guilty. Just a misunderstanding, his lawyer claimed. No intent to harm. Never mind the knife. Never mind the threatening notes. Never mind the brick through my window at 3 a.m. The prosecutor told me, "We'll need you to testify." I nodded. "I will," then paused. "But I won't be the only one." Leo was coming too. The judge allowed it. Not because dogs usually attend court, but because Leo wasn't just a dog. He was the first responder, the warning system, the one who did what no human had done. He stopped the attack before it began. The day of the trial, the courthouse was packed. Reporters, locals, even some of the shelter volunteers who'd followed our story in the paper. Lena stayed with my sister. He says, safe, far from the tension. Leo, he walked beside me with his head held high, wearing his medal of bravery like a soldier entering battle. We sat in the front. When the bailiff asked for quiet, Leo sat perfectly still, like he understood. The prosecutor stood. The defense will argue this was a harmless incident, but what they don't count on, what they can't explain, is instinct, and that instinct has 4 legs. I took the stand, explained everything. The notes, the growing fear, the night of the break-in. Then I described how Leo reacted, how he had sensed something long before I ever did. The defense attorney tried to object. "She's attributing human understanding to an animal." The judge leaned forward. "Sometimes animals understand more than people do." Then came the surveillance footage. The moment the man stepped into the kitchen, the crash, Leo's immediate leap into frame. The fight. No hesitation, no barking first. Just action. The courtroom was silent. Even the jury leaned forward. Leo sat by my feet, tail still, head tilted slightly like he remembered it all. Finally, the prosecutor asked one last question. "Why do you think Leo knew what none of us did?" I looked at the jury, then at Leo, then said, "Because he listens, always. He doesn't need words to know when something is wrong. He doesn't need logic to act on love. He just sees us, all of us." The courtroom was quiet again, but not cold. There was warmth in it now. Respect. The jury didn't take long. Guilty, all charges. Afterwards, as people filtered out, one reporter approached me. Can we run a full story on Leo? I nodded and smiled. Just don't call him a dog. He's more than that. She tilted her head. Then what is he? I looked at Leo, his metal gleaming, his eyes full of calm. And I answered, he's proof that love never has to speak to be understood. 2 weeks later, the shelter hosted a city event. They named it the Leo Awards, a new annual celebration honoring animals who'd protected, healed, or simply stood by their humans when no one else did. Leo was the first honoree. Ellie stood on stage holding her drawing of Leo in a cape. When asked if she wanted to say something, she stepped to the mic and said, he barked when I was scared. He stayed when others left. He saved us by seeing us. The crowd clapped. Some cried, and Leo? He just wagged his tail once and laid down like a king at peace. Later that night, I sat alone with him on the porch. The sky was full of stars, I whispered. You didn't just save us. You made us into something worth saving. He leaned into my leg, closed his eyes, and I swear in that moment, Ned, I felt more understood than I had my entire life. It started with footsteps. Soft, measured, just beyond the fence. Leo was the first to notice. He always was. That night, Lena and I were in the backyard. She was painting on the patio while I read on the swing. Leo was stretched out in the grass, half asleep, but then he snapped to attention. Ears up, body still, eyes locked on the back gate. I looked up. What is it, boy? He didn't bark, didn't growl, just stood, frozen. Alert. Then I heard it too. Shuffling, a slow drag of footsteps across gravel. I walked over and peeked through the slats in the wooden fence. There he was, a man, mid-40s, ball cap pulled low, wearing a worn leather jacket. He wasn't touching the gate, not even close to it. Just standing there, looking at the house, not moving. I cleared my throat. Can I help you? He didn't answer, just stared. Leo stepped beside me then, placed himself between me and the fence, still not barking, but growling, deep, low, controlled. The man finally looked down, then turned and walked away. That night, Leo didn't sleep. He kept pacing between windows, watching, waiting. Lena asked, is it happening again? I forced a smile. Probably just someone passing through, but Leo didn't believe that, and neither did I. The next morning, I called the police. They drove by, took a report, asked if I'd gotten a clear look. No crime committed, they said. Probably just a drifter, but Leo wasn't convinced. And I'd learned when Leo knows you listen. The next time it happened, Lena wasn't home. She was at art class. I was watering the garden. Leo was bed by the fence. Again. Growling, this time louder. I rushed over, and there he was. The same man. This time I'm closer. Right at the gate, hand resting on the top slat. Still silent. Still staring. You need to leave, I said firmly. Now. He tilted his head. Spoke for the first time. Nice. Leo lunged against the fence with a sound so sharp it sliced through the air. The man stepped back. Didn't run. Didn't apologize. Just nodded once. I'll be back. Then turned and walked away again. I called the police again. They promised to patrol more frequently. Said they'd look into it, but I knew they didn't take it seriously. Just like before. Just like when Monica's cousin had left notes on my porch. That night, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I sat on the floor with Leo and talked. Not just good boy or you're my hero, but really talked. You knew about Monica, you knew about the break-in, and now you're telling me this isn't over, aren't you? He rested his chin on my leg. And I swear, he sighed, like yes, like you're finally listening again. I checked our camera footage, installed a new floodlight by the gate, taught Lena how to call 911 just in case. But more than anything, I trusted Leo. 3 days passed. No sightings. I started to relax. Maybe it was over. Maybe the man had moved on. Then the note came. Slipped into our mailbox. Typed, neat, precise. You think the dog will save you again? I froze. Leo stood by the door. Waiting. Not wagging. Not blinking. Just ready. I didn't tell Lena this time. I didn't want to scare her. But that night, that night, she sensed it anyway. She found me standing by the window, Leo at my feet. She whispered, he's coming back, isn't he? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. Leo stepped forward and pressed his head against her side. And she nodded. It's okay, boy, we're ready this time. It happened just past midnight. The house was quiet. Lena had fallen asleep hours earlier with Leo curled at the foot of her bed. I was lying awake, staring at the ceiling, heart unsettled. There was no sound, no movement, but somehow I felt it. And so did Leo. He stood up suddenly. No bark, no growl. Just a silent alert, like the air had changed, like danger had slipped in through the cracks. I followed him down the hallway, barefoot, pulse racing. He moved like a soldier, focused, aware, listening with more than just his ears. He led me to the front door, then stood still and still. I looked through the peephole. Nothing. But Leo didn't move. He was blocking the door, and I trusted him. So I stepped back, turned off the porch light, called the police quietly. I think he's back, I whispered. The man who's been watching us. 10 minutes passed. Then, tap, tap, tap. Not on the door, on the window. Kitchen side, far corner. The camera hadn't picked it up, but Leo had. He took off, nails scraping across the floor. I followed with shaking hands, peered around the corner and saw it. A shadow, a man, standing just inches from the glass, looking in, right at Lena's school picture on the fridge. I stepped back, hand over my mouth. Leo crouched low, tail stiff, eyes burning with quiet fury. Then the man moved towards the back gate. Leo spun and ran, cutting through the hallway, heading to the back entrance before I could even think. I grabbed my phone, unlocked the back door, and there he was, the man, halfway through the yard. But Leo was faster. He didn't bark, didn't growl. He just stood in front of the back door, teeth bared. The man froze, eyes wide. "You're not going to do anything," he muttered. But he was wrong, because this time I was behind Leo, and this time I had a baseball bat. The police arrived seconds later. The man tried to run, but he didn't get far. Leo didn't move from the door. He just stared after him, breathing slow and steady, like a warrior who knew the battle was won. Later, the police told me he had gloves, a crowbar, zip ties. I sat down hard. He wasn't just watching. No, he was coming in. They arrested him on the spot. And trespassing, attempted break-in, violation of protection boundaries. But to me, the charge that mattered most, threatening what Leo considered home. I let Lena sleep that night. Didn't wake her, didn't let the fear spread. I just sat with Leo in the kitchen, hand on his head. Neither of us spoke, but both of us knew. He had stopped it, again, before it became tragedy. The next morning, Lena found us like that. She blinked sleepily. Did he do something brave again? I smiled through tears. He did something only he could have done. She walked over, kissed Leo's head, and whispered, I knew he would. That day, something changed. Leo didn't just become our protector. He became something more. The neighbors started calling him the guardian. The news picked up the story again. Even the shelter where I'd adopted him reached out with an offer. Would you allow us to name our rescue program after Leo? I cried when I read that email. They called it the Leo Line, where love learns to listen. That evening, Lena and I planted flowers along the backyard fence. Leo watched us from the porch, tail thumping lightly. Lena turned to me and said, he knew before it happened. Again, I nodded. Because he doesn't just protect us from danger. He protects the silence, the things we don't say out loud. Leo stood up, walked toward us. Then stopped. He placed a paw gently on the new soil and looked at me, like saying, it's over now. Yeah, for real. And I believed him. The danger had passed. The man was in custody. The fence was reinforced, extra lights, extra locks. But Leo? Leo didn't relax. Not in the way we did. He still did his rounds, still sat by the windows, still followed Lena from room to room like her silent twin. But it wasn't about fear anymore. It was something else. One evening I asked Lena, do you think Leo ever rests? She looked at him, curled on the rug, eyes half closed but ears alert. I think he rests when we're okay, not when the house is. It was the kind of answer only a child could give, and only a child who'd been protected the way Lena had. That night, something unusual happened. Lena brought me her sketchbook. I drew what Leo sees, she said. I flipped the pages. Her drawings were soft, hazy, dreamy. Leo standing by the window, but behind the glass was a field of light, not a backyard. Leo sleep in, but surrounded by silhouettes of people we didn't know. Leo looking at Lena, and behind her, a faint shimmering version of me. What are these? I asked. She shrugged. Not sure, but sometimes I think Leo sees things we've forgotten. I didn't sleep well that night. Not because of fear, But us, but because of wonder. Could it be true? Could Leo remember more than just us? I started digging, literally and emotionally. I called the shelter where we found him. Do you have any background on Leo? The woman on the phone was kind. We don't. He was dropped off anonymously. No microchip, just a note. My heart jumped. A note? She hesitated. It wasn't much, just said he never barked, not even when she stopped breathing. I sat down, note shaking in my hand. She stopped breathing. I asked for a copy. When it came, the handwriting was messy, pained, like someone had scrawled it through tears. No name, no details. But suddenly, I understood. Leo had seen loss before, watched it happen, and maybe, just maybe, he'd vowed to never let it happen again. That's why he stayed alert, why he watched, why he moved without hesitation when danger came. Because he had once failed. Not by choice, not by fault, but by force. He had loved before, and that love had slipped through his paws. So with us, yeah, I mean, it says, yeah, he refused to let it happen and happen again. I sat with him that evening, held the note in my hand, ran my fingers through his fur. You saw something, didn't you? I whispered. You carried it with you all this time. He didn't move, just leaned into me, breathing and slow. Safe. Lena came and curled beside us. She held up a new drawing. It was Leo. Surrounded by shadows, yes, but glowing, a soft golden outline around his body, like light, shaped like a dog. She whispered, He glows more when we're happy. Did you know that? I didn't answer, because yes, I think I did. The shelter reached out again. They wanted to feature Leo in their campaign, not just for what he did, the director said, but for what he represents. They titled it Leo's Light, A Legacy of Listening. Posters went up around town, Lena's drawing as the central image. People donated, volunteered, adopted. And Leo? Leo sat on the porch, tail gently wagging whenever someone passed by and waved. He wasn't barking anymore, not even growling. He didn't need to, because now they saw what he saw. One neighbor, a veteran, came over quietly one afternoon, knelt beside Leo, didn't say a word, just cried. When he finally looked up, he told me, He reminds me of a dog I had in Iraq, saved me from a landmine. I never told anyone about her, but Leo knows. And he did. Leo laid his head in the man's lap, closed his eyes, and offered what words never could. That night I whispered to him, You didn't just save us from danger, Leo. You saved us from silence, from being forgotten, from thinking we were alone. He blinked slowly. And I swear, for the first time, he looked tired. Not in pain, but full, like a chapter had ended, and he was ready for the next. Leo began to sleep more often. Not from age, not from sickness, but from something softer, quieter. Peace. It was in his breath, in his eyes, in the way he rested beside Lena, no longer alert, just present. He no longer paced the hallway at night, didn't rush to the windows, because finally, after everything, he believed we were safe. And we were. Because of him. Lena had started leaving her bedroom door open again. She no longer jumped when the wind rattled the windows. She painted brighter colors, sunshine yellow, sky blue, soft rose pink. And in every picture, Leo, always Leo. Sometimes as a guardian angel, sometimes as a superhero, but always watching, always close. One afternoon, I found a letter tucked under Leo's bed. It was from Lena, written in crayon, folded neatly. It read, Dear Leo, I know you're getting tired. If you need to sleep for a long time, it's okay. I'll keep Mama safe like you taught me. I love you forever. You're a girl, I cried. Not because I was sad, but because my daughter had learned how to love fully and let go gently, all from a dog that once didn't bark. The next morning, Leo didn't get up when I called. I found him in his favorite sunspot by the window, his chest rising, falling, slow. Lena sat down next to him. He's not gone yet, she whispered. He's just saying goodbye in his own way. And he was. He stayed with us for 3 more days. Long enough for one last walk around the garden, one last sleep at the foot of Lena's bed, one last moment, just me, him, and the stars. I held him that night, whispered everything I never said. Thank you for staying, for never giving up, for seeing me when no one else did. He passed with his head in my lap. No struggle, no sound. Just a long breath and peace. We buried him beneath the willow tree in our backyard. The same tree where he once growled at a stranger, where Lena read books in the shade, where our story began. We carved a stone for him. Leo, the one who knew, beneath it. You listened, you stayed, you saved us. That weekend, we held a small memorial. Not sad, just full of light. Lena wore a yellow dress. She handed out small sketches of Leo to each guest. People brought flowers, some brought stories. A woman from across town shared, I adopted a rescue because of Leo. I was scared, but then I thought if he could protect them, maybe another dog can protect me. Hope bloomed from heartbreak, just like Leo would have wanted. A few weeks later, the shelter called. A tiny puppy had been left at their door. Shaken, silent, alone. They weren't sure she would survive the night. We brought her home. Lena named her Hope. She wasn't Leo. She didn't need to be. But the first night we had her, she curled into Leo's old bed, right in the dent he'd left behind, and slept. Safe, Lena whispered. She fits Mama like she always belonged here. And maybe she did, because Leo didn't leave in emptiness. He left space for love, for healing, for another story to begin. Now, every night before bed, Lena kisses Hope goodnight. Then she looks at Leo's photo above her bookshelf and says, I've got it from here. And I whisper, me too, because Leo didn't just protect our home. He built it brick by brick, bark by bark, heartbeat by heartbeat. He was the dog who stayed, even when no one else did.